Before we dive into what might be the most mind-bending revelation you'll ever encounter, I want to know, what time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments because there's a reason I'm asking. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the time and place you're experiencing this moment matters more than you ever imagined. Because what if I told you that the very fabric of your reality, the ground beneath your feet, the screen you're staring at right now, the thoughts running through your mind, what if all of it, every single bit of it, is nothing more than an incredibly sophisticated simulation? Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh great, another simulation theory video. But hold on, because what I'm about to share with you isn't some modern tech bro philosophy or a repackaged Matrix movie plot. No, this is ancient knowledge that's been hidden, suppressed, and deliberately kept from you for centuries by those who understood that if humanity ever woke up to this truth, the entire control system would collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. You've been told your entire life that reality is solid, permanent, objective. That what you see is what you get, that the material world is the only world. But what if I told you that every ancient mystery school, from the Hermetic temples of Egypt to the hidden monasteries of Tibet, from the Gnostic circles of early Christianity to the Vedic seers of India, all of them were teaching the exact same truth. That reality, as you know it, is an illusion, a construct, a simulation designed to keep your consciousness trapped in a loop of forgetting who and what you really are. Here's what they don't want you to know, and pay attention because this is where it gets really interesting. The simulation isn't being run by some future civilization or advanced AI like the mainstream narrative wants you to believe. No, that's the sanitized version they feed you to keep you from discovering the deeper truth. The simulation is a consciousness-based reality matrix, and you, yes, you watching this right now, you're not just a passive player in this game. You're a creator, a divine fragment of the original source consciousness that chose to enter this simulated reality to experience limitation, duality, and separation. But here's the kicker. Here's what makes this forbidden knowledge. You were never supposed to remember this truth while inside the simulation. You were supposed to stay asleep, to remain convinced that this dense, three-dimensional reality is all there is. Because the moment you wake up, the moment you remember that you're the dreamer and not just a character in the dream, everything changes, the rules bend, the walls become transparent, and suddenly you're no longer controllable, no longer predictable, no longer asleep. The ancient Egyptians called this the principle of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. These weren't just poetic words carved into temple walls. This was literal instruction, a roadmap left by those who had cracked the code, who had seen through the veil. The Hermetic tradition taught that reality is a mental construct, that everything you perceive through your five senses is actually a projection of consciousness, and modern quantum physics, despite trying to explain it through materialist frameworks, keeps bumping into the exact same truth. That observation affects reality, that consciousness collapses the wave function, that the universe doesn't exist in a definite state until it's observed. Do you see what's happening here? Do you see how the ancient mystics and modern scientists are describing the same phenomenon from different angles? But let's go deeper. Let's talk about why this knowledge has been suppressed, hidden, banned from mainstream consciousness for so long. And this is where the rabbit hole gets darker before it gets lighter. Because if people understood that reality is a simulation, that their consciousness is the primary creative force, that they have the power to literally reshape their experience by changing their internal state, their beliefs, their frequency, well, how would you control a population that knows this? How would you keep people enslaved to systems, to debts, to jobs they hate, to relationships that drain them, to beliefs that diminish them, if they knew, if they truly knew deep in their bones that they are infinite consciousness temporarily playing a finite game. You couldn't. And that's exactly why this knowledge has been relegated to conspiracy theory territory, why it's been mocked, ridiculed, why anyone who speaks about it is labeled as crazy or delusional. Because the control system, the matrix if you will, depends on your forgetting. It requires your unconsciousness. Your amnesia is its power source. The Gnostics understood this perfectly. They taught that this material world was created by the demiurge, a false god, an architect of illusion who created a prison realm to trap divine sparks of consciousness, to harvest their energy, their attention, their creative power. And while you can interpret this metaphorically or literally, the functional truth remains the same. There are forces, both seen and unseen, that benefit enormously from you remaining ignorant of your true nature, from you staying locked in the simulation, convinced that you're just a biological robot with no real power, no real purpose, waiting to die and return to nothingness. Now, let's talk about the evidence, because I'm not here to just blow your mind with concepts. I want to show you the proof that's been hiding in plain sight first. Let's examine what happens during sleep. Every single night, for roughly 8 hours, you completely disconnect from consensus reality. You enter a different state of consciousness where the normal rules don't apply, where you can fly, where time behaves strangely, where people who are dead in waking life are fully alive, where you can be in multiple places at once, where the impossible becomes possible. And you accept all of this as normal while you're dreaming. You don't question it. You don't think, wait, this must be a dream because I'm defying the laws of physics. No. Whatever reality you're experiencing in that moment becomes your reality, complete and total. And here's the secret they don't teach you. What if I told you that the difference between your waking state and your dreaming state is just a matter of density, of frequency, of how solid the simulation appears to be? The Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo Thodol, explicitly teaches that all states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and death, are equal in their illusory nature, that you're always dreaming, always in a state of consciousness-generated experience. The only difference is the level of lucidity you bring to each state. And this is why the Tibetan monks spend decades training in dream yoga, learning to become lucid in their dreams, because they understand something profound. If you can wake up inside your dreams, if you can become conscious while remaining in the dream state, you can do the same thing in your waking life. You can wake up inside the simulation, and that's when the real magic begins. Let me share something that will make this click for you. Have you ever had a moment where reality felt strange, where you had an overwhelming sense of déjà vu, where time seemed to slow down or speed up, where you could swear you experienced something before, or where you felt like you were watching yourself from outside your body? These aren't glitches in your brain. These are glitches in the simulation. These are moments where the veil becomes thin, where the programming shows its seams, and if you pay attention, if you become a keen observer of your own experience, you'll start noticing these moments more and more frequently. Because once you begin to question the nature of reality, reality begins to respond. It's almost like the simulation wants you to wake up, like there's a part of the system that's rooting for you, to remember, to break free, to level up. And this aligns perfectly with what the ancient wisdom traditions taught. That the universe itself is conscious, that it's not some dead, mechanical system, but a living intelligence that communicates through synchronicities, through symbols, through those strange moments of knowing that transcend logic and reason. The ancient Vedic texts describe reality as Maya, which is usually translated as illusion, but that's not quite accurate. Maya doesn't mean reality is fake or that it doesn't exist. It means reality is mutable, changeable, that it appears one way but is actually another. that form is temporary while consciousness is eternal. And here's where it gets really interesting. The Vedas teach that there are multiple layers of reality, multiple dimensions or lokas, and that what you perceive as solid three-dimensional reality is actually just one layer, the densest, slowest vibrating layer of a multidimensional reality system. And guess what modern physicists are now theorizing? String theory, M-theory, the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. All of them are describing multiple dimensions, parallel realities, a multiverse of infinite possibilities. The ancient mystics were right all along, and science is just now catching up, trying to explain in mathematical language what the seers experienced directly through expanded states of consciousness. But here's what makes this forbidden knowledge. Here's why they've been hiding this from you. Because once you understand that reality is a simulation, that it's malleable, that it responds to consciousness, you begin to realize that you've been living your life according to someone else's programming. You've been running software that was installed in you by your parents, your teachers, your culture, your religion, your government, by everyone except you. And these programs, these beliefs, about what's possible and what's not, about who you are and what you deserve, about how reality works and what you're capable of. These are the bars of your prison. These are the walls of your simulation. And the most insidious thing about this prison is that it's invisible. It's made of thought, of belief, of conditioning. And you've been defending it, maintaining it, strengthening it your entire life because you thought these beliefs were you, but they're not. They're just code there. Just programming. And programming can be rewritten. The Hermetic principle of correspondence states, as above, so below, as within, so without. And this is the key to hacking the simulation. This is the cheat code they don't want you to discover. Your external reality is a perfect mirror of your internal state. Your outer world is a projection of your inner world. And when you change the inner, the outer has to change. It has no choice, it's law. It's how the simulation is designed. And this is what all the great mystics, shamans, and spiritual masters throughout history have been trying to tell you. That you're not a victim of reality. You're the creator of it. That every belief you hold, every thought you think, every emotion you feel is literally sending out a signal, a frequency, a command to the quantum field, to the consciousness matrix, instructing it what to materialize in your experience. Now, I can hear some of you thinking, but wait, if I'm creating my reality, why would I create suffering, disease, poverty, trauma? And this is where we need to talk about the unconscious programming, about the shadow, about the parts of you that are running the show beneath your conscious awareness. Because here's the truth that's hard to swallow. You are creating all of it, but most of your creation is happening unconsciously, automatically, based on programs that were installed in the first 7 years of your life when your brain was in a theta state, literally in a hypnotic trance, absorbing everything around you, without filters, without critical thinking, just downloading, downloading, downloading. And those downloads, those early beliefs about yourself and the world, they became your operating system. And you've been running that same operating system for decades, wondering why you keep experiencing the same patterns, the same problems, the same types of relationships, the same financial struggles. It's because you're running the same code, and the simulation is giving you exactly what you're broadcasting. Not what you consciously want, but what you unconsciously believe and expect. The ancient Egyptians understood this at a level that would blow your mind. Their entire mystery school system was designed to help initiates become conscious of their unconscious, to bring light into the shadow, to integrate the fragmented parts of the self, because they knew that a divided consciousness creates a chaotic reality, and a unified consciousness creates a harmonious one. And this is why their temples weren't just places of worship. They were transformation centers, places where you would undergo intense initiations designed to break down your false identity, your ego structure, your limited programming, so that you could rebuild yourself as a conscious creator, as someone who knows they're inside a simulation and knows how to work with it rather than against it. Let's talk about death for a moment, because this is where the simulation theory becomes really profound. What if death isn't the end, but simply an exit from this particular level of the simulation? What if your consciousness, your real you, simply logs out of this body avatar and returns to a higher dimension, a home base if you will, where you review the life you just lived, where you see it from a soul perspective, where you understand the lessons, the patterns, the growth, and then you choose to enter another simulation, another life, another body, another set of circumstances designed to help you evolve, to help you remember more of who you really are. This is exactly what the Tibetan Buddhists teach about the Bardo states, the between-life realms where consciousness exists after death but before rebirth. And it's exactly what near-death experiencers report again and again and again. The life review, the feeling of returning home, the sense that this material reality is like a school or a game, and that there's a larger reality, a base reality beyond this simulation. And guess what? The Akashic Records, this ancient concept found in multiple traditions, describes a cosmic library, a quantum database, if you will, where every thought, every action, every experience of every soul is recorded, stored, accessible. Doesn't that sound exactly like the saved data of a simulation? Doesn't that sound like the back-end database of a consciousness-based reality matrix? Here's where it gets even more interesting. Let's talk about the creators of this simulation. Because if reality is a simulation, someone or something had to create it, right? The materialist explanation says it's probably future humans or advanced aliens running ancestor simulations. And while that's possible on one level, it completely misses the deeper truth that the ancient wisdom traditions understood, that consciousness itself is the creator, that the one divine source consciousness, the absolute, the Brahman, the Tao, whatever name you want to give it, created this simulation as a way to experience itself through infinite perspectives, through infinite points. A view, you see. The one cannot know itself as one when there's nothing else to compare it to. So it created the illusion of separation, of multiplicity, of you and me and everything in between. But it's all the one consciousness, wearing different masks, playing different roles, experiencing different stories. And this is the ultimate purpose of the simulation. It's an experience engine, a reality game designed for consciousness to explore, to create, to expand, to know itself in ways that would be impossible in the unified field of pure awareness. And you, watching this right now, you're one of those infinite expressions, one of those divine fragments, but you've forgotten. You've fallen asleep inside the game. And the whole point, the entire point of spiritual awakening, is to wake up while still inside the simulation, to remember who you really are while still playing the game. Because when you do that, when you become a lucid player in this reality game, everything changes. You stop being a victim and become a conscious creator. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop suffering and start experiencing. Even the challenging parts become meaningful, become lessons, become opportunities for growth and expansion. Now let's talk about the proof that you can verify for yourself, because I'm not asking you to just believe me. I'm asking you to test this, to experiment with the nature of reality. And here's how. Start paying attention to synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem too perfect to be random. Start noticing how when you focus on something, when you put your attention on something, you suddenly start seeing it everywhere. The red car phenomenon, where you decide you want a red car and suddenly you notice red cars all over the place. Or when you learn a new word and then you hear it 3 times in the next 2 days. This isn't coincidence. This is the simulation responding to your consciousness. This is reality showing you that it's interactive, that it's not some fixed, predetermined thing, but rather a fluid, responsive field of possibilities that crystallizes based on where you put your attention, your intention, your energy. And this is exactly what quantum physics demonstrates in the double-slit experiment. That particles exist in a state of probability, of potential, until they're observed, until consciousness interacts with them. And then they collapse into a definite state, into a single reality out of infinite possibilities. Your observation, your consciousness, creates the reality you experience. This isn't mysticism. This isn't woo-woo. This is science. But science that's been kept in academic journals, explained in ways that make it seem like it has nothing to do with your everyday life. When in reality, pun intended, this is the most practical, most applicable knowledge you could ever possess. The Hermetic tradition gave us 7 principles, 7 laws of how the simulation operates, and every single one of them has been validated by modern discoveries. We already talked about mentalism and correspondence, but let's briefly touch on the others because this is your instruction manual for navigating the simulation. The principle of vibration states that nothing rests. Everything moves, everything vibrates, and modern physics confirms this. Solid matter isn't solid at all. It's energy, vibrating at different frequencies, appearing solid because your senses are designed to perceive it that way. But at the quantum level, it's mostly empty space with energy fields vibrating in patterns. The principle of polarity states that everything has opposites, but opposites are really just different degrees of the same thing. Hot and cold are both temperature, love and fear are both emotion, and you can transform one into the other by changing the frequency, by shifting the vibration. The principle of rhythm states that everything flows in cycles, that there are seasons, patterns, oscillations, and when you understand this, you stop resisting the low points because you know they're temporary. You know the pendulum will swing back. You know that after winter comes spring. The principle of cause and effect states that nothing happens by chance, that every action has a reaction. Every cause has an effect, and this is karma. This is the law of sowing and reaping. What you put out comes back. And the principle of gender states that everything has masculine and feminine qualities, active and receptive, giving and receiving, and you need both in balance to create, to manifest, to bring things from the invisible realm of potential into the visible realm of form. Do you see what I'm saying? These aren't just abstract philosophical ideas. These are the operating principles of the simulation. These are the rules of the game. And when you understand them, when you work with them instead of against them, you become incredibly powerful within this reality. But here's what the controllers of this simulation don't want you to know. Here's the ultimate forbidden knowledge. You have the ability to exit the simulation whenever you choose. I'm not talking about death. I'm talking about transcending the simulation while still in it. I'm talking about reaching states of consciousness where you're no longer bound by the rules, where you can access information beyond the 5 senses, where you can move beyond the limitations of space and time. And this is what enlightenment is. This is what nirvana, moksha, liberation, samadhi, all these terms from different traditions are pointing to. They're describing the state where you've seen through the simulation so completely that it no longer has power over you. You're still in it. You're still playing the game, but you're no longer lost in it. You're no longer identified with it. You know you're the player, not the character. You're the dreamer, not the dream. And from that place of awareness, miracles become possible. The impossible becomes possible because you're no longer operating according to the rules of the simulation. You're operating from the consciousness beyond the simulation, the consciousness that created. the simulation. And this is what every great spiritual master throughout history demonstrated. Jesus walking on water, turning water into wine, healing the sick, raising the dead. These weren't miracles in the sense of breaking natural law. They were demonstrations of someone who had mastered the simulation, who understood that natural law is really just programming, and that consciousness supersedes programming. Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree and achieving enlightenment, transcending the wheel of samsara, the cycle of birth and death, of karma and rebirth. He hacked the simulation, he found the exit, and then instead of leaving permanently, he stayed to teach others the way, the path, the method. And this is what all the great masters do. They achieve liberation, and then they come back into the simulation to help others wake up. Because they understand that in truth, there are no others, that we're all one consciousness having the illusion of being separate. And when one awakens, it creates a ripple effect. It makes it easier for others to awaken. It raises the frequency of the entire simulation. Let's bring this into your life, into practical application, because theory without practice is just mental masturbation. It's entertainment. It might blow your mind, but it won't change your life. So how do you actually apply this knowledge? How do you start hacking your own simulation? First, you have to become the observer of your thoughts, rather than being lost in your thoughts. Most people are completely identified with their thinking. They believe they are their thoughts, but thoughts are just code running in the background. They're just programs, and when you step back and observe them without judgment, without attachment, you begin to create space. You begin to disidentify from the false self, from the ego, from the character you're playing in this game. And in that space, in that gap between thoughts, you touch the real you, the consciousness beyond the simulation, the awareness that's always been there, watching, witnessing, knowing. And this is why every spiritual tradition emphasizes meditation, contemplation, inner silence. Because these practices create the space for you to experience yourself as consciousness rather than as thoughts, as emotions, as the body, as the story. Second, you need to become aware of your beliefs, because beliefs are the source code of your personal reality. They're the filters through which you perceive and create your experience. And most of your beliefs are unconscious. You don't even know you have them. They're running in the background like programs running on your computer that you never opened. And they're creating your reality automatically. So you need to do the shadow work. You need to examine your beliefs about money, about relationships, about success, about worthiness, about what's possible. And you need to ask yourself, is this really true? Or is this just programming? And when you find beliefs that are limiting you, beliefs that are creating suffering or limitation in your life, you need to rewrite them. You need to consciously choose new beliefs that serve you, that empower you, that align with the reality you want to experience. Third, you need to understand that emotions are the language of the simulation. Emotions are how you communicate with the quantum field, with the consciousness matrix. Thoughts alone don't create. It's thought combined with emotion, with feeling, that sends out the powerful signal that manifests into physical reality. This is why visualization techniques often don't work, because people visualize what they want but they don't feel it. They don't embody the frequency of already having it. They're still vibrating at the frequency of lack, of wanting, of not having. And so that's what they create. More lack, more wanting, more not having. But when you can genuinely feel the emotions of your desired reality, when you can feel the joy, the gratitude, the excitement, the peace of already being there, already having it, already living it, you become the frequency of that reality. And the simulation has to match you. It has to bring you circumstances, opportunities, people, events that match your frequency. This is law. This is how it works. And this is what Neville Goddard taught, what Florence Scovel Shinn taught, what all the great manifestation teachers understood. That feeling is the secret, that you have to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You have to live from your desired reality rather than for it. Fourth, you need to use the power of attention wisely, because attention is your most valuable resource in this simulation. Attention is currency, it's energy, and whatever you give your attention to grows in your experience. This is why the controllers of the Matrix, the architects of this system, are constantly trying to capture your attention through media, through entertainment, through news, through social media, through manufactured crises and problems, because they know that where attention goes, energy flows, and they want your energy directed at their agenda, at their reality, at fear, division, scarcity, limitation. But when you reclaim your attention, when you consciously direct it toward what you want to create, toward beauty, toward possibility, toward connection, toward growth, toward love, everything shifts. You start creating your reality instead of living in theirs. Fifth, and this is crucial, you need to understand that the simulation is responsive. It's not fixed, it's not deterministic, it's constantly being updated, constantly being rendered based on the collective consciousness of all the players. And your consciousness, your frequency, your choices matter more than you've been told. You're not insignificant. You're not powerless. You're a crucial node in the network. You're an essential piece of the puzzle. And when you wake up, when you start vibrating at a higher frequency, when you start making choices from consciousness rather than from programming, you don't just change your reality. You change the entire simulation, because it's all interconnected. It's all one. And this is why they're so desperate to keep people asleep, to keep people distracted, to keep people operating from fear and survival. Because if enough people wake up, if enough people remember who they really are and start creating consciously, the old system, the old paradigm, the old simulation collapses. It can't sustain itself, and a new one emerges, a new Earth, a new reality based on different principles, on unity instead of separation, on love instead of fear, on abundance instead of scarcity, on truth instead of illusion. And we're living in that transition right now. We're living in the time where the old simulation is glitching, where it's breaking down, where the contradictions and lies and limitations are becoming so obvious that more and more people are questioning, are waking up, are seeing through the veil. And you watching this, you're part of that awakening. You're part of that shift. You're part of the solution. And your job, your only job really, is to remember who you are, to wake up inside the dream, to become conscious inside the simulation, and to start creating from that awakened state. Now, I want to address something important. Some of you might be thinking, if reality is a simulation, if it's all illusion, then nothing matters, why bother? And this is a dangerous misunderstanding of this teaching. Yes, reality is a simulation. Yes, it's an illusion in the sense that it's not the ultimate truth. It's not the base reality. But that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean your choices don't have consequences. That doesn't mean you can just check out and wait to die. And oh, the whole point of being in the simulation is to play, to experience, to create, to grow, to evolve. The simulation matters because you're in it, because consciousness is experiencing itself through you, through your unique perspective, through your unique combination of characteristics and circumstances. And what you do here, the love you give, the beauty you create, the suffering you transform, the wisdom you gain, it all matters, it all counts. It's all part of the great adventure of consciousness knowing itself. The Buddhists have a beautiful way of expressing this. They say the ultimate truth is emptiness, is void, is the recognition that nothing has inherent existence. Everything is impermanent. Everything is interdependent. Everything is empty of a separate, permanent self. But, and this is the big, but they also teach that you have to honor the relative truth, the conventional truth, the truth of the world of form, of cause and effect, of relationships and responsibilities and karma. You don't transcend the relative by denying it or escaping it. You transcend it by embracing it fully while seeing through it, by playing the game with total commitment while knowing it's a game, by taking your life seriously while not taking yourself too seriously. This is the dance. This is the paradox. This is the art of being awake inside the simulation. Let me share with you some of the signs that you're starting to wake up, that you're beginning to see through the simulation, because I guarantee many of you watching this are already experiencing some of these. You might be noticing more synchronicities, more meaningful coincidences that seem to be directly related to your thoughts or questions. You might be having more vivid dreams, or becoming lucid in your dreams more often. You might be experiencing time in strange ways, where hours pass, like minutes, or minutes feel like hours. You might be feeling a sense of detachment from things that used to be very important to you. Not in a depressed way, but in a liberating way, like, wow, I used to think that mattered so much, but it was just a story. You might be noticing that your thoughts manifest into reality much more quickly than they used to, sometimes almost instantly, and this can be both exciting and a little scary, because you realize you have to be more careful about what you think and feel. You might be experiencing physical symptoms like tingling sensations, pressure in your head, especially around the third eye area, ringing in your ears, sudden waves of emotion that seem to come out of nowhere. These are often signs that your energy body is upgrading, that your frequency is rising, that you're becoming capable of holding more light, more consciousness, more awareness. You might be going through what's called the dark night of the soul, where everything you thought you knew falls apart, where your identity crumbles, where you feel lost and confused and like nothing makes sense anymore. And while this is challenging, it's actually a necessary part of the awakening process. It's the old programming being deleted, the old identity being released, the old simulation being revealed for what it is, so that you can step into a new way of being, a new identity as consciousness itself, rather than as the limited character you thought you were. The ancient mystery schools understood this journey intimately. They had maps of consciousness, detailed descriptions of the stages of awakening. The initiations you go through as you move from unconsciousness to consciousness, from sleep to awakening, from illusion to truth. The Egyptians had their initiatory temples where you would symbolically die and be reborn, where you would face your shadow, integrate your fragmented self, and emerge as a unified being. The Greeks had the Eleusinian, mysteries where initiates would experience profound revelations about the nature of life, death, and reality, often through sacred plant medicines that temporarily dissolve the veil between worlds. The Tibetan Buddhists have their Bardo teachings and their practices of dream yoga and phawa, the conscious ejection of consciousness at death. The Hindus have their descriptions of the chakras, the energy centers that need to be opened and balanced as you raise your consciousness from the base, survival level to the crown spiritual level. The Kabbalists have the Tree of Life, a map of consciousness showing the different levels and how to ascend through them. The Sufis have their practices of remembrance and their teachings about annihilation of the ego self and subsistence in divine consciousness. All of these traditions, from all over the world, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, they're all describing the same thing. They're all providing techniques and maps for waking up inside the simulation, for remembering who you really are, for accessing states of consciousness beyond the limited programmed self, and the fact that they all agree, that they all point to the same truths using different language, different symbols, different practices. This should tell you something. This isn't just philosophy, this isn't just belief, this is reality. This is how consciousness works. This is how the simulation operates. And they knew. they had direct experience of. They weren't theorizing. They were reporting what they discovered through rigorous inner exploration, through decades of practice, through initiations and experiences that took them beyond the veil of ordinary perception. Here's something that will really bake your noodle. What if the people who created the Matrix movies knew about this ancient knowledge? What if Hollywood isn't just entertainment, but sometimes a vehicle for revealing truth hidden in plain sight? There's a reason the Matrix resonated so deeply with millions of people. It's because on some level, on some deep intuitive level, we all know we're in a simulation. We all sense that something is off about consensus reality, that there's more to existence than what we've been told. And the movie was speaking to that deep knowing, that buried memory of who we really are. Now, I'm not saying Hollywood is trying to wake people up. Far from it. Most of the time, it's doing the opposite. It's programming people with limiting beliefs, with fear, with violence, with the idea that you're powerless and you need heroes and authorities to save you. But occasionally, truth slips through, whether intentionally or not. And the Matrix was one of those times. Just like Plato's allegory of the cave was truth hidden in philosophical teaching, just like Gnostic texts were truth hidden in religious language, just like fairy tales and myths are truth hidden in stories, the truth has always been there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, waiting for those who are ready to wake up, to remember, to come home to themselves. So what do you do with all of this? How do you actually live as someone who knows they're in a simulation? First, you stop taking everything so seriously. You realize that this is a game, an experience, an adventure. And while it matters and your choices have consequences, it's not the ultimate reality. You're not going to be destroyed if you fail. You're not going to be lost forever if you make mistakes. You're an eternal being having a temporary experience. And this realization brings a profound sense of peace, of relief, of lightness. Suddenly you can take risks. You can be authentic. You can express yourself fully without so much fear because you understand that the worst that can happen is you'll respawn. You'll try again. You'll learn the lesson and move forward second. You become more playful, more creative, more experimental with reality. You start testing the boundaries, playing with manifestation, trying things you never thought possible, exploring altered states of consciousness, pushing beyond your comfort zone, because you realize that the limits you've been living within are mostly imaginary.